Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about Ted Bundy and the significance of him because he was charismatic, well-spoken, intelligent, believable, and some consider him handsome. He's also the one who put serial in serial killer, and his significance is that he instilled a lasting fear in that anyone could be a killer. He was born as a Cowell in 1946, and he was left in an orphanage for the first 3 months. We can safely assume there was no bonding initially. He would later say as an adult that he never understood why people like each other. His mother was Eleanor Louise. She went by Louise, and she claimed that the father was unknown. She had a fling with a sailor. But family members suspect that her father, Eleanor Louise's father, Samuel Cowell, fathered him. He made clear after 3 months she had to pick him up from the orphanage. Samuel was a bigot, a racist. He beat his wife and his animals. He also threw his daughter Julia down the stairs for oversleeping. He was basically a violent and abusive man. But Ted bonded with what he thought was a father. He also believed his mother was actually his sister. So we can understand there was confusion there. Ted Bundy has denied that thought. Louise decided to move to Tacoma, partially for work and maybe to get away from her father, but this devastated Ted. He also held a grudge and enormous resentment towards his mother for not revealing his true father, and that may explain his anger towards women. She married Johnny Culpepper Bundy in 1951. They had another 4 children. Although John tried to include Ted as his stepson, Ted remained distant, claiming that Johnny was not very bright and did not make much money. There were disturbing behaviors early on. Young Ted laid knives around a napping Julia, and when she woke up, he laughed at her. As a teenager, he was a peeping Tom, started using alcohol abusively early on. He also dug holes in running paths and put spikes on the bottom to hurt runners. He would take young girls into the bushes with him, get them undressed, and then he would urinate on their clothing, so they had a decision to make. One day he was on a summer camp and somebody noticed him coming out of the tent followed by an adult. He was disheveled and looked fearful. Reportedly, he burned cats, hanging them on a clothing line. He was also a kleptomaniac. One day he walked into a store, picked up a palm tree as if he belonged there and just walked out with it. He already had a Volkswagen Bug with a sunroof, and the tree was apparently sticking out of the sunroof. Elizabeth Kendall, which is his pseudonym, talked about the drowning incident in her book. They were floating down the river on tubes, and he suddenly pushed her down underwater and held her there for a few seconds. She thought he was going to kill her. His killing spree started during her relationship with him, but she was unaware of that. And she sometimes wondered whether she was the trigger. And Ted replied with, "No, there is something the matter with me. It wasn't you, it was me. I just could not contain it. I fought it for a long, long time. It got too strong. We just happened to be going together when it got underway. I tried, believe me, I tried to suppress it. It was taking more and more of my time. That is why I did not do well in school. My time was being used trying to make my life look normal, but it wasn't normal. All the time I could feel that force building in me." Now, when we look at his handwriting, and this is a letter to Dr. Conte, a psychiatrist, regarding the disappearance of Anne-Marie Burr. Ted's handwriting is extremely heavy in pressure, and that suggests strong emotional intensity. And people with strong emotions have strong memories, and they dwell on these memories. The emotional impact is high. He also has an unstable baseline. Look at the first and foremost, how that fluctuates, and that suggests mood swings, and therefore unreliable responses, because you never know who shows up, the optimist or the pessimist. One of the most significant traits that we see in his handwriting is the initial braced stroke. And that stroke must be straight, it must be rigid, and come from below the baseline. We see that happen multiple times. It means that the author with an initial braced stroke has deep-seated resentment. And he said in the past, I tried to suppress it. All the time I could feel that force building in me, and he could not control it. The stroke starts in the lower zone, and that is the instinctive zone. So the anger that he expressed is instinctive and therefore uncontrollable. We also see an invasive lower zone, which is the loop of the G itself that goes through the next line. That implies that the individual is scattered in their thinking. They jump from subject to subject. They spread themselves thin by committing to too many activities, and they have a constant need for more because they're never satisfied. When we look at deviation from the norm, then we look at the ACAP in Anne-Marie. We see that suddenly that is a little squiggled, as if he was suddenly nervous. Look at the other tops of the letters, but especially the A's, they are smooth. But in N, nervousness shows up. Also, the A stem is not retraced, and that suggests slowing down. And both these traits suggest an increase in anxiety, and therefore, within the context, suggests deception. We also see in the word and nothing that the midzone I shrivels up, and that implies guilt because it is a sudden change from a normal size to too small. The word nothing also has a baseline fluctuation, and the I dot did not return to the I stem, suggesting impatience, sudden impatience, because all the other I dots are above the stem. Again, that suggests an increase in anxiety and suggests deception within the context of the letter. Another deviation from the norm is the sudden muddying of the body of the letter D in do. Again, this is a word that is slowing down. Intrusive thought happened, and the pen continued to form the body of the D. Another slowing down is in the word with, which is written slower. We also see that the mid-zone I dot suddenly changed to circular and is placed precisely above the I stem. Again, this is an increase in caution in how to say what. Likely an intrusive thought occurred, and again, within the context of the letter, did you kill Anne-Marie Burr, suggests deception. Kendall again wrote in her book, The Phantom Prince, My Life with Ted Bundy, while she had a phone conversation with Ted Bundy being in jail, said, but the police is saying that the murder started in 1969. That is the year we met. Remember, she always felt that she was the trigger. What was it that made it start in 69? And Ted Bundy famously replied, oh, the police is years off. And that brings us back to Anne-Marie Burr. Rebecca Morris, in her book Ted and Anne, states that she died in 1961. And if we apply his statement police his years off, that could very well mean that Anne-Marie was his murder victim, as his handwriting suggests. Ted Bundy himself was 14 at the time. So when we combine childhood confusion regarding parents, father, the upbringing that he had with violence, bigotry, and hatred, the ideation that women are second class, possible sexual abuse at home and possibly at a camp. Remember, if his grandfather actually fathered him, then he had incest with his daughter. The deep-seated resentment that he shows in his handwriting and has expressed, his anger towards women as expressed in the murders, then we can think in the direction that a child growing up without an outlet to express how he or she feels and or thinks must resort to acting out to what was done to them. For more information on Ted Bundy, look up my book, We Are the Same. It's the details that differ. And I'm also the author of JonBenet, The Final Chapter. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and you hear from me soon.